We're live. Huge show today. We have on for the very first time Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. That's going to be a great interview. Looking forward to that. We're trying to get in contact with him. Always love to interview new people. We also have Fiona Diamond. She was arrested by UK police. What was the reason for it? Did she break any laws? Was she violent in a place where there is a lot of crimes? No. Nay. She did the crime of being in public transport on a train, minding her own business, speaking to someone about the Holocaust. And for that, she was arrested. So we're going to find out her story. We're going to find out about this blatant attack on free speech. That's the second person. And the third person is our very own Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Agalair. Looking forward to having him on. Always appreciate him. Always appreciate his insight. So this is going to be awesome, to say the least. So looking forward to that. Lots to speak about and lots to get through. I'm going to give you the news. If you're on the other channel, just guys, if you can get everyone across to this channel. I already see some people here already, so appreciate it. I should put the link in the nest of both of them. I should pin that as well. And I'm on the wrong phone as well, so that's a bit of a mess up. But let me just quickly... So I'm putting this in the nest, guys. So that's in the nest. If you can retweet that. And so is... Wait, I thought I'm live on X. Did the X not go live? Wait, that's strange. 1 second. Okay, I don't know why the X didn't go live, but that's not the biggest problem in the world, to be honest. Did I not do it?
That's the on X. You talking about the X?
X live. Is it live?
Yeah, it's called Test, but I see you on there.
Oh, I changed the name. Okay, so I'm gonna give me 2 seconds. Casey, just give us tell everyone to retweet. I'm just gonna jump on my other phone.
Interviews today, marathon interviews with Colonel Wilkerson, Fiona Diamond, which I'm going to hear why exactly this Fiona Rose Diamond was arrested. I can only imagine the word anti-Semitism has something to do with it. So it'll be interesting to hear that story. And of course, we will have Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar coming through, who's always coming in with the facts. We appreciate when Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar comes in and then tells us what's going on. And this man has served the country and is still serving the country by bringing truth to Americans and people worldwide. So retweet and reshare this space. If you guys are on the live streams, please hit the like and hit the thumbs up button to like the stream. If you haven't subscribed yet to Suleiman's channels, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, as that is very important for you to know when the next video or when Suleiman is going live, for you to get notifications so you can be a part of it. So just make sure you do all of that. And especially in a time like this when they're trying to suppress the truth and the real news from all of us. And they're going to go hard on. They're going to keep going hard on this. So this is how we support what Suleiman is doing by getting his footage, his videos, his lives moving across the algorithm. And you can do that by hitting the like and hitting the subscribe and hitting the notification bell. I'm not sure if Suleiman is back yet.
I am, yeah, guys. If you can retweet the space, if you can reshare the space, let everybody know we're live. Yeah, I think the X, I messed it up because I was testing it before. And because of the test, I think what's happened is the test is still kind of weirdly running, and so it's not letting me start again. But that's fine, that's fine. The main thing is we're live on YouTube and everyone can hear on audio on here. That would be awesome. Okay, yeah, it's not gonna work. Okay, cool. So let's see. We're gonna have Colonel. Well, let me see if he's actually messaged me, because hopefully there's no mix-up in timing. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, cool. He'll be joining any minute now. It is gonna be fire. Colonel Wilkerson. Trump is in China. He is ready for a conversation about China. Trump is in China. What is the Chinese? Are the Chinese gonna force? Are the Chinese... Oh, wait, I just have live, but it's weird. Okay, are the Chinese gonna force them into are they gonna force Iran into war with? This is what we're gonna see. As in, sorry, are they gonna force them into peace? In peace, I mean by that is force them to capitulate to the demands of the United States of America. This is gonna be the $1 million question. We're gonna look into that. We're gonna see if that's the case. We're gonna ask our guests about that. Also, we know Netanyahu flew to the UAE in a secret meeting during the Iran war. And Iran's foreign minister arrived in India for a BRICS foreign ministers meeting. So we'll talk about all of that. So looking forward to it. Let's get into it. Hi, Colonel Wilkerson. How are you? Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear.
Brilliant. Just want to welcome Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson onto the show. A real pleasure to have him on the show to speak about his geopolitical insight. He served the country for many years and he's been analyzing a large number of geopolitical issues. And recently he's been focusing on the Iran war. Thank you so much for taking your time out to join us. How are you?
I'm tired, frankly.
Tired, just tired as in like individually tired or tired from this whole situation?
Both, both,
Philosophically?
both. Mentally tired of trying to keep up with this bunch of clowns in our White House.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I'm with you there, Colonel. I'm with you there. It is exhausting to say the least. And even when you've got a couple of hours, somehow they just speed by, and then you're like, "What is going on?" We're back to work again. So
Yeah.
it's crazy. But Colonel, thank you so much for joining us. I want to immediately ask you. Currently, Donald Trump is in a summit in China. What's going to be discussed there? And the reason I ask this question is if you look at the array of talent that's gone there, these are oligarchs, these are trillionaires. You got people like Elon Musk, you got the head of Nvidia, the head of Google, you got the head of MasterCard, Visa. What is this meeting really about?
Let's take a moment and parse it very carefully. First of all, I want to compare it with previous summits. And it can be Moscow, it could be Beijing, it could be Paris or London. Always before, what has happened is a massive complex or somewhat massive complex of diplomats and diplomatic people have gotten together and built a plan. And that plan then goes forward with certain experts following along with the president for execution. That's not what happens with this administration. This is a complete deviation from the normal process of effecting negotiations, whether they're diplomatic, business, or whatever. So that's the first thing. There is no plan, and there's no one in this group other than the president himself, and we all know how fickle and mercurial he can be, who is apprised of what their purpose is. And that's on purpose because Donald Trump does not want anyone to know what his purpose is. That's the first thing. The second thing is look at the constituency of this group, as you just pointed out. This is a group that he has, and there was some brain power used here, limited though it was probably. This is a group probably constituting the only group that China and Xi Jinping in particular would listen to or would give time to in a way that might, at the end of the day, be somewhat productive. Because it's the only interest, I think, anymore, that the leading economy in the world, in almost every element of state power and state economic and technological power in particular, it's about the only realm where there is any influence left for the United States of America. So that's how sparse is the punching bag, the match, if you will, that's being put together right now. And the only people who can punch are these technocrats, these CEOs who command, as you said, trillions of dollars in some cases, but certainly billions of dollars, and certain niches in the U.S.'s technological bag, if you will, that are not necessarily already overcome by China or are equal with China or in some cases maybe just a necessary ingredient that China would like to have, could get elsewhere, but this would be an easy place to get it if they did. So this is all about business. This is not about anything but business. And on the side, the president of the United States, who by himself and his buddy Bibi Netanyahu has got himself in a terrible, terrible fix with this war with Iran, which he is losing, he might be able to use these people and their talent and their insights into the Chinese needs and China's actual needs to get China to help him get out of this stupid conflict. I don't think it's going to work, but I'm pretty sure that's what Donald Trump is about.
And so I mean, I guess this is one of the questions. I did see a report earlier on today, and I doubted its credibility, but the claim was that China was allegedly going to be pushing Iran towards a deal. Were you hearing something similar, or do you think this is just propaganda and it's actually the other way around?
I think it's probably propaganda. I don't think China will be pushing either way, frankly. Now, there is a story that just broke here in the New York Times. I don't know if it was carried anywhere else, but that China is guilty of allowing certain companies in China, and the government knows about this, was the allegation, to sell arms to Iran. And the implication was it was quite copious what they were doing. I don't know if that's propaganda leaked by us to the New York Times to put pressure on China, but what I'm hearing is twofold. One, I'm hearing that there is sizable support in certain areas that are critical for what Iran does not have. Take satellite coverage, for example. Take targeting from satellite coverage. Think about Zelensky and what he was able to do to Russian strategic nuclear assets inside Russia because he used our satellites to target. I think that's probably going on. I think China is providing that sort of thing to Iran. But in terms of other visible things, I'm not sure there's anything much going on. But what really is going to be on Xi's mind, I think, is what Anatole Levin pointed out this morning in an article at Quincy Institute, and that is that they are winning. They know they're winning. They're winning in almost every element of state power, from cultural to technical to economic to military to industrial base to shipbuilding. You name the element that signifies state power, and China's winning. The place where there may be somewhat of a tie, depending on the category you look at, is high technology. But I think China really across the board is winning there too. So their theory, and I think this is very Chinese, and I've known China since 1984, first time I went there. Their philosophy is they're losing, they're committing suicide. Let's not stop them. But let's not do it too rapidly or too dramatically so that we start something that'll hurt us both and wind up in a nuclear war. That's China's strategy, I think. It kind of reminds me of Ricardo Alarcón in Cuba when he was head of the National Assembly. He said to me, the empire is fading, and it's fading rather fast, but we know that a dying elephant can thrash a lot of grass, and we don't want to be in the grass when it starts thrashing.
Yeah.
Well, China's not in that position, certainly, but China does not want to disturb what is a very fast developing world that is developing in China's favor. And the United States still retains enough residual power to disturb that. So they want to stay away from that.
That makes sense. And I am a big believer that when an empire falls, sometimes they do something extreme before they allow themselves to decline. And so US, I don't see them just walking away and just allowing this decline to happen. I think they may try something a bit excessive or aggressive towards China. So China has to kind of play this a bit smart and just let them kind of become weaker on their own. So I just completely agree with what you said there. But this is sorry.
Well, I was just going to say the other element in there that is very dangerous, and it's not to be poo-pooed, it's not to be taken slightly, is that in all the 5,000 years of human history that empires have come and gone by the hundreds, really, none of them had nuclear weapons. You know, Nebuchadnezzar II didn't have nuclear weapons. Caesar Augustus didn't have nuclear weapons. None of the Genghis Khan didn't have nuclear weapons. He had something like a nuclear weapon, if you will, with the hordes, but he didn't have this technological capacity to end human life. We do, as do 8 other nuclear power states, 2 of them significantly, India and China, and maybe Pakistan too. That's new. That's very new. So, as you just said, an empire going down that has nuclear weapons to the capacity that we do, 6,000 warheads nearly, we're not going down without using that.
Yeah, that's a big concern, actually. Now, this is the very first time we've had you on the show, so we really appreciate you coming on. What's kind of your overarching perspective on what's happening with the Iran war? And what I mean by that is you're saying that they're losing. You quote the Quincy Institute, and I agree with it. But in terms of each element, we saw 39 days of kinetic warfare. What's your kind of thesis of what happened there from a military perspective?
I think we entered a conflict we did not realize the nature of. I think we were convinced by Bibi Netanyahu through his intelligence, if you will, that, and I don't mean his brain power, I mean Mossad, that the Iranian government would collapse. As he has said again and again throughout our history of relations with him, they didn't. And I think that's the problem now because we thought it was going to be quick. We thought it was going to be over. We thought once the decapitation strategy occurred and the Ayatollah was dead, the people would rise up and take over the government and we would have no problem in creating what we really want to create, what Netanyahu wants to create, which is a group of Bantustans. We want a bunch of Kurds, a bunch of Azeris, a bunch of Persians, all fighting each other in turmoil and civil war, much like what Syria was and probably will be again. And that's what Israel wants, and that's what we want. We do not want a united state of Iran. And we certainly don't want one with nuclear weapons and the ballistic missile inventory that they have now. And we're not going to get that. I think Haaretz summed it up really well about 3 days into the war when it said, all Iran has to do to win is not lose. All the United States and Bibi have to do to win is a spectacular victory. They're not going to achieve that. So we've already lost.
Now, you mentioned the ballistic missile program. How does that impact the United States of America? I can see how it impacts Israel. And this is why I always thought that this was going to be one major factor which causes the war to occur. And this is I'm talking about on February the 28th. But from the ballistic missile perspective, how does this impact the United States of America? They don't have ballistic missiles that can hit US.
It doesn't. And I think it's a fair statement, and many experts have made this statement in different contexts, but I think the context doesn't really matter. The statement is still accurate. Iran presents zero threat to the United States of America, unless, I would say, the United States of America gives it the opportunity to. And I would then point at the Strait of Hormuz and say, we gave them the opportunity to do that, which is incredibly stupid of the military in particular, because all they had to do was go back to the files and look at what happened in 1988 when Iran was much weaker than it is now. After all, it had been fighting Saddam Hussein in one of the most brutal wars in the region in history for 8 years. And we took them all on at the end of that conflict, and we took them on in the Persian Gulf, and it was difficult even then. And Iran didn't have nearly the capacity they do now, especially the ballistic missiles. So we gave them the opportunity to make this a conflict that they could determine the real damage to the U.S. in. In other words, the Strait of Hormuz it's everything. And it has been turned rapidly into being a possible global recession bringer and even a possible global depression bringer. Economists right now are talking about if we don't remedy this situation significantly, we'll certainly be in recession by June, maybe July. We'll be in depression by September or October. And that's just based on what we are not going to be able to get our hands on that 2/3 of the world needs to get its hands on to survive or to survive in some decent way.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Now, in terms of the Strait of Hormuz, Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. They, what you call it, and then America put the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. How did you see that going in terms of the blockade on the blockade? it seems that Epstein's lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, was the one who kind of presented this idea, which Trump found very interesting and then applied.
Well, the confusion that this administration has over international law is just legion. I don't think they care a damn about international law, but I happen to still do, and I think some other people in this country do. And international law, for many, many years, one could argue for a millennium, but certainly codified for at least 75, 80 years, considers a blockade an act of war. So Trump actually, if he wanted to start the war powers resolution process over again, could say, I didn't have a war going until I blockaded. But Marco Rubio, to show his ignorance, stands up and says on TV, a blockade's not an act of war. I mean, that's how ignorant our Secretary of State is. You may recall that John F. Kennedy, when he was working with his ex-com in October 1962 to deal with the Cuban missiles, Soviet missiles in Cuba, someone suggested a blockade, and he thought it was a great idea. But he said, we can't call it a blockade. Why? They asked. He said, because it's an act of war. John Kennedy knew it was an act of war. So he turned to the Secretary of Defense, I believe it was. It might have been Bobby, his brother, but I think it was McNamara. And McNamara said, let's call it a quarantine. And so we called it a quarantine. We borrowed a term from medical business, call it a quarantine. Rubio didn't even know that a blockade was an act of war, but it is an act of war. And it is the essential act of war right now because the blockade can go both ways. And it is together causing the problem that we have that is the deepest and most concerning problem, and that's global commerce.
No doubt, no doubt. And the impact that's having on the world is unparalleled. But now, in terms of the blockade itself, there's been major failures. And what I mean by that is we saw Trump trying to implement Project Freedom. We had many military experts, Larry Johnson and various others, who basically said this is just not going to work. And within a day or two, Trump had to tackle and basically pull out of Project Freedom. He's later kind of said, I am still considering it as one element of a larger military escapade. What's your kind of thoughts on any possible success if there was a different way of kind of dealing with the issue of the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, what I've heard and what I fear is that the way he was going to deal with it was another massive air campaign that would feature everything the United States could throw into it, from B-52s at high altitude to B-2s to B-1s, everything that could drop any kind of ordnance whatsoever would strike Iran, and IDF would join, IDF Air Force would join. And we would be doing what we did initially over and over again for about 10 or 11 days. In that kind of calamity, you might be able to assert some sort of force that could establish a true blockade and keep it going. But that's probably about the only way you'd be able to do it. And you wouldn't be able to do that for any great duration because once you stopped all that and people came out of their holes, so to speak, and went back to their missiles, you'd be in trouble again. And frankly, we don't have enough ships. We simply do not have enough ships. You're talking about right now probably somewhere close to 2,000 ships standing off in the Sea of Oman, the North Arabian Sea, elsewhere in the vicinity. And they've got something like 20,000 sailors on board them, and they are not going north. They're not being able to transfer their goods or pick up. So we've got a real problem, and the blockade is not going to do anything to alleviate that. If you could seal the blockade so that the blockade on its flanks was successful, and you could send ships through the North and the South Channel, then you might achieve something. But you've got so many ships now, that would take you forever to do that. And you have to remember, too, and I'm sure that people who know this situation well will understand what I'm talking about, the ships that left immediately prior to this conglomeration building up because they couldn't get through the strait, either north or south, those ships have arrived. They've offloaded their cargoes. They're gone. They're headed somewhere else now. So it's only now that this shortage is going to become absolutely critical because nothing else is coming in. And even in the United States, you have farmers that are up in arms right now and protesting to the White House on a daily basis because they can't plant their crops. They can't get fertilizer. There are all kinds of problems developing even in the United States' farm community. So you can imagine what's happening in Europe and elsewhere. This is really bad, and a blockade, as you say, even if it could be made effective in somewhat the way I just described, would do nothing. It would do nothing. If you can't get those ships convinced that they can go through both ways, ply their normal trade, insurance companies can insure them at regular cost, and that they can do what they do in relative safety, you're not going to affect it at all.
No doubt, I agree with you. Now, in terms of what happens next, you talked about Trump planning an 11-day bombing campaign. If you look at the military assets that are now in the region, they've got more carriers, they've got more attack missiles. But then on the other hand, we have reports that they're running out of supplies. They have, if you look at it in total, it's like they've ran out a large amount of supplies. There's reports that they won't have enough if there was a conflict with China. I guess my question on this is, and there's two elements to it. The first one is there more assets in the region now than there was on February the 27th? If there is, then the second part of the first question is, how long can those last, those weapons? And then the third element is, how much of the entire inventory have they then used if they were to use that? And I'm thinking about that in the sense of, let's say they were to bomb 11 days, and then you'd have another ceasefire. Would they come back? Would the US and Israel come back again after like a month or so?
Well, those are all good questions, and I would throw Israel into that too, because Israel's going to join this, with chapter and verse. I think we've got a real problem past 10 or 11 days. And let me back up and say that the real air power here is not going to be the carriers. The carriers can only generate so much air power over such a period of time. If you have three carriers flying at the same time with plenty of tanking, and you're probably going to have to throw Air Force tanking into it too, then you can create 96 hours or so of hell. You can drop a lot of ordnance. But the real power is in the Air Force. And the Air Force is going to come from all over the world. It's going to come from Ramstein in Germany. It's going to come from Japan. It's going to come from Korea. It's going to come from the continental United States. It's going to come from everywhere that it is in a position to come from right now. And they have positioned these assets fairly strategically. So you're putting all these planes in the air over Iran, and you're assuming that their air defenses aren't going to shoot them down, or that your capability to suppress those air defenses is going to work. We don't know that for sure, particularly not since I don't think we have seen everything Iran has yet in that capacity. And then the second part of your question is, yes, we are draining down. We're in the bombing with just smart bombs and glide bombs and things like that. We're not in terrible shape. But in the more sophisticated weapons, we're bleeding them down, and Israel is bleeding them down. And Israel we're not even talking about what Israel's going to take if this starts, because Iran is going to unleash its full arsenal of ballistic missiles on Israel if this starts again. I'm convinced of that. And Israel's already taken massive hits. Haifa, Ben Gurion Airport, massive hits. And now you've even got the Israelis complaining about the United States putting so many planes in Israel and moving them around all the time because we don't want to get them destroyed, that they don't have space to park their own planes. So you got complaints coming out of the IDAF right now about U.S. loading down Israel with planes. Well, Iran's not going to let those planes sit there. Not if we start up again. They're going to pound the hell out of them. So this is fraught with problems, even if it's executed halfway halfway expertly. We still have problems at the end of the bombing period. And I think the major problem is all we're going to do is make 92 million Persians and others in Iran even more resolute in standing up to us. So what have we gained at the end of this, except more dead innocent civilians?
No doubt. So you believe that based on the current buildup of military assets, they could only do 11 days. And then imagine they did those 11 days. I guess the secondary question of that is we already know the US was kind of weak on supplies when it comes to a numerical factor. I guess my question is, could they end up doing another 30-day ceasefire and then doing another bombing campaign for 2 weeks? Like, how much from the wider military capability will they have left after they did this next bombing campaign?
The real attrition is in things that are more sophisticated than the kinds of bombs we would be dropping on Iran. And by that, I mean it's in THAAD, it's in Patriot, it's in the things that defend you in particular against your enemy, and it's in the more sophisticated type missiles that attack people, like Tomahawk. So, yes, you're right that there would be an attrition there that would probably be insupportable for another such massive attack in terms of those more sophisticated weapons. But in terms of the less sophisticated dumb bombs that you just strap a harness on and they become smart bombs, we got plenty of those. We got tons of those. But your question is well asked. I don't think we can do it again. I don't, and it would be insane to do it again, because all we're doing is killing innocent civilians. All we're doing is perpetrating war crimes, and we're not accomplishing any purpose. And one of the first things we ought to do when he comes back from China, I don't think he's going to do this. I don't think Hegseth is going to do this. I don't think anyone in the administration is going to do this. We should articulate to the United States Congress what our strategy is, what our purpose is. If we have to do it in closed session, that's fine, so that nothing leaks out, that's fine. We have a Congress that is so supine, it doesn't even know what to ask when it brings the witnesses forward or how to get them to tell them what's actually going on. That makes me think they don't really care. Makes me think they don't give a damn.
They don't care.
This is not what we should be doing with our military, and not telling the oversight committees of that military what we're doing and why we're doing it. And yet that's what we're doing. And that they're letting it happen is appalling.
I believe it was Senator Kelly who came out from a closed briefing, I believe a few days ago, and said that I think that's where he leaked that America just doesn't have enough defense interceptors, offensive weapons, and they're really struggling on supplies. So it seems like they're aware of this. And so I guess the question here is, they've got two choices. They've got either a deal or they go kinetic again, as per what you said, for like 7 to 14 days. But then if they were to go kinetic again for 7 to 14 days, based on what you're saying, they won't have this opportunity to go kinetic again. And if that's right, they're basically going to be even more stuck than they are now, right?
Absolutely. And I don't think that's what Trump wants to do. I think what Trump wants to do is achieve, and he may get enough of a bump from China that he goes ahead with this and just says to hell with Bibi Netanyahu. I think what he wants to do is he wants to achieve a nuclear deal. He doesn't really care about the other aspects. He wants to achieve a nuclear deal that he can hold up in front of the White House and wave and say, this is better than the JCPOA. This is better than Obama got. This is a nuclear deal that we can live with. And he'd be content to have that be all that he accomplishes with this war. He'd, of course, propagandize it as a lot more than that, but that would be sufficient for him to stop this conflict. Not for Bibi, though. And we've seen that. Bibi's been saying some things of late that make us stand up and take notice, like maybe we don't need America anymore. Maybe we don't need the money we get from America anymore. Maybe we've got better allies to pick out. Maybe we've got better things to do. Bibi's doing that, of course, to bring pressure on Trump. But at the same time, you have to think, this is not a stupid man. He's evil. There's no question in my mind. He's homicidal. He's maniacal. He's evil. I would rate him with Adolf Hitler. But he's not stupid. So he's going to make sure he's got some place to go if he's still in charge. And that's a big question, too, now. When Trump tells him no. I'm not going to finish off Iran, as it were.
We'll have to wait and see. I just don't see Trump agreeing to that deal. And I think Netanyahu, when he says he doesn't want US money. I think, in my view, that's a manipulation, because they know that the American public, the world, is aware about these $3 billion that is going to them on a yearly basis. So if they remove that, they think that they can manipulate the public into thinking that they're not being funded by the United States of America. But this doesn't count the, for example, emergency money that Trump's given. I believe it's almost $30 to $40 billion since he's been in power.
Yes.
It doesn't count the excessive amount of military costs that have been spent in order to defend Iran. I believe in the first 12-day war, it was 50 billion or 100 billion. I can't remember the exact figure now. This one, you're looking already at 100 billion. So these numbers are just exponential in terms of the level of spend. And then this doesn't go into like the amount of money that is spent on Israeli tech, Israeli stock market. So I think this is just like a narrative building situation as opposed to a realistic, tangible way of reducing reliance on the United States of America.
I think it's propaganda that he's trying to use to bring some pressure on Trump. And I think we at the Eisenhower Media Network and other think tanks that I've worked with, we're now looking at the possibility that this is already, since 28 February, this has already cost about $225 billion.
Wow.
They're lying, in other words. The Pentagon's lying.
I agree with you. How did you get that figure?
We put everything together, operational costs. We put, when we do it, we look at the cost of taking care of the wounded, the cost of taking care of the dead. We look at every possible cost associated with a war or a conflict. And when you add all those figures, Brown University has a cost of war project that has a really good analytical tool that does this. And when you look at that and you think about how much of the money is going from, so let's say, this account to Israel or this account to Lockheed Martin or both, and you put it all together, you get 3 or 4 times as much as Pete Hegseth has been telling the Congress. On almost every figure he gives, put a factor of 3 times 3, and you'll get a better idea of what they're actually spending. And I've been there. I did this. I helped tell these lies at one time. I mean, they're not exactly lies because you're saying, okay, in this account, you just asked me about this account. In this account, we spent $2 billion. But what I'm not telling you is this account over here and this account here and this account had to be tapped in order to get that moving. And so it wasn't just 2, it was 4 billion. And then you add all that up over time, and I just tell you the Defense Department never tells the complete truth, because if they did, then they would get real trouble with their oversight committees. At least that used to be the case. I'm not so sure anymore. I'm not so sure the oversight committees give a damn. And that's a real sad comment about our Congress. They used to care about how much money was going out. They don't care anymore, apparently.
True. And so you're saying $250 billion is almost being spent according to your organization, which is shocking to say the least.
Well, we're looking at right now for the national security budget. Now, you have to parse your words carefully here. The national security budget includes Homeland Security. It includes the CIA white and black budgets. It includes the atomic energy, the nuclear budget at DOE. It includes Veterans Administration, which is now up to about $350 billion annually because of all these new veterans we've created, 20 years of wars. When you look at the national security budget, not the NDAA, the national security budget, it's well over $2 trillion annually now.
No doubt. Completely agree with you there. So I guess then the question mark becomes, if we just bring it back to this kind of thought conversation we're talking about. So there's like if they do the 11-day war, he's going to be stuck. He's going to have to do a deal. If he doesn't do a deal, then is this not going to have to be a situation where he does escalate? He's going to have to either go to a ground invasion, possibly use a nuclear bomb. There's people like Professor Paper who I interviewed yesterday, and he said this is kind of like the slow-moving escalation trap, which ends up resulting in a forever war, a ground invasion. What's your thoughts on that?
The person who scares me there is Bibi Netanyahu. I have no compunction saying that I think Bibi Netanyahu would not hesitate to use several nuclear weapons if he felt that Israel was in an existential situation. And I don't think it would be a single nuclear weapon, because a single nuclear weapon of the yield that Israel has would not do very much to Iran. Big, big country. And you'd have to drop 30 or 40 in order for it to have the kind of devastating effect that everyone associates with a single nuclear weapon. Now, in terms of letting the genie out of the bottle on nuclear weapons use, yes, a single one would do that. But in terms of warfighting capacity against a country as big as Western Europe, and with 90 plus million people in it, and with a multiplicity of targets that you would have to hit, you'd have to have air bursts, ground bursts, semi-air bursts. You'd have to have all kinds of different kinds of explosions in different kinds of terrain. He'd have to shoot quite a few. In fact, it'd be a tactical problem of the first order. There'd be some fired from submarines. There'd be some probably dropped by aircraft. And it would be much worse than people are thinking about if they're thinking just about Israel using a single nuclear weapon. Because using a single nuclear weapon would be stupid. It wouldn't do anything except in that one spot it hit.
But the nuclear fallout would be unimaginable. You're looking at regions connected to it, like
Yeah.
Pakistan, Kazakhstan. You got Central Asia. You've got possibly even the Gulf states would get harmed by the nuclear fallout.
Now, I'm not trying to make light of it, but that depends. I was a prefix 5 officer in the Army. That depends on whether you airburst, near airburst, high airburst, ground burst, subsurface burst. You're not going to get a great deal of fallout if you put it in a place, for example, like Isfahan, and you're underground slightly. So it depends on what you do. Now, if you put them all on airburst or high airburst, then you're right. Then you're going to get 10 or 12 really big problems. The fallout will go everywhere. Think of the reactor in Ukraine that a few years ago, Chernobyl. I was told it's not Chernobyl, it's Chernobyl. Apparently they say Chernobyl.
So there, okay.
Yeah, but it depends on where your burst is as to what you get in terms of fallout. But you're right, it's not something we should be starting. Because once you do it, I think people are right. That's the lowest rung on the nuclear ladder. I don't think you stay on that rung. Once you start using nuclear weapons, you start going up the ladder fairly rapidly.
Yeah, this is a huge concern, and actually, I agree with you. I wouldn't put any of this past the Israelis. But I guess from a strategical perspective, you think that would be more likely than possible ground invasion?
I think so for Israel, because I don't think Israel has the capacity to conduct a ground invasion of such a big country. Look at the problems they're having with Hezbollah right
Yeah.
now. They want to go further north across the Litani River, and they're being impeded mightily. They're not making much
They're
progress.
struggling.
Yeah,
And consistently, this has been a
yeah,
common thing with the Israeli army. They just can't do a ground invasion.
yes, yes.
But
And they're being hounded right now by the likes of Naftali Bennett, Lapid, and others, members of coalition of Netanyahu's own coalition, because they're not finishing off Hamas. They will not go down in those tunnels. They know Hamas is in those tunnels. They will not go down in those tunnels because they know they're going to take lots of casualties if they go down in those tunnels. So he's being hounded right now by aspects of people from his own coalition who are mad at him because he hasn't, as one of them said, quote, finished off Hamas, unquote.
well, Naftali Bennett, who is now probably the leading candidate as the opposition because he formed a party with Yair Lapid, essentially said that he felt like in Lebanon they weren't going far enough. He felt like he was hampering the soldiers.
Yes,
And this is why I've never seen this as like a Netanyahu issue. They think that Netanyahu is being too soft, that he's being too defensive in some aspects of the war, and they want him to be a lot more extreme and a lot more offensive. And
you're right.
so that's the kind of views on Lebanon, right?
You're right. And I think President Aoun is more and more conversant with that aspect of Netanyahu. That's one reason he doesn't want to meet in the same room with him.
Well, I do think he's doing secret deals with him though, covertly. But
Yeah.
coming back to it, so we agree that obviously Israel would not do a ground invasion. And actually, when conversations about ground invasion were occurring, Israel said, "We're not going to do it. We'll just give the Americans the intel. They need to sacrifice their men. We're not going to sacrifice ours." But I guess from American perspective, if it was obviously the ideal is a deal, but let's say the deal wasn't possible, do you think Trump would be more open to a ground invasion or using a nuclear bomb? I mean, when someone asked him and a reporter asked him about a nuclear bomb, he said, "This is horrific. Like, we would never even think about using something like this."
But he also said he would never go to war in the Middle East,
True.
and that the war with Iraq was, terrible, horrible, and everything else. I mean, I remembered what he said, and he hadn't lived up to a single word of that. But let me answer your question directly. The United States could not conduct a ground invasion without getting massacred. We do not have enough troops. We could barely putting the Marine Corps and the Army together, we could barely put 400,000 men and women into Iran. They would be up against at least 2.5 million who have armaments sufficient to kill them, and probably they'd be up against about 50 million. If you go back to the Iran-Iraq War and you look at the human wave attacks, you look at what the Ayatollah at that time actually did to get the advantage on Iraq, who used chemical weapons against them. We know we sold them the precursors. They were fierce fighters. And, every GI that hit the ground, every American soldier that hit the ground, every Marine would have 10 Iranians to kill in order to achieve any degree of success. So it would be tantamount to a disaster if Trump did that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, just reversing conversation, we just had reports today over this last week. The first one was the UAE had conducted secret attacks on Iran. We had the same thing about Saudi Arabia. And today we got a report saying that Netanyahu had secretly flown to UAE to visit MBZ during the war. What's your thoughts on this kind of geopolitical conversation in terms of the Gulf states and how they're becoming very close to Israel?
Well, the UAE has made itself known as a recalcitrant partner in the GCC ever since it started, Little Sparta. And I think they have made some very bad decisions, and I think this is one of them. I think they made that decision, and then the next day or the next 72 hours, they lost their pipeline. The Iranians essentially took it out. You stand up against Iran with Israel or the United States as your surefire backup with great peril, especially now, because the United States' presence in the region is very dubious in the future, very dubious, and Israel is in as much trouble as it has been in since 1948, maybe even existential trouble. I do not think a Jewish state will exist in the Levant for much longer. They could exist if they turned themselves into a true democracy and they became a single state that took everyone on board, Christian, Muslim, Jew, agnostic, atheist, everything else. Mostly what we're talking about is Palestinian Arabs. They could exist and they could stay in the region. It would be difficult for a long time to come as they tried to reconcile if they were a true democracy. Or I may be wrong. Yitzhak Rabin once said something to the effect of, "You might be surprised at how fast we come to an accommodation and live together if we try." And that might, even with this slaughter in everyone's memory, from the Nakba to Gaza today, even with all that in the memory, if you really tried to live as a democracy and share the land and share the water and share the assets, period, share the governance, it might be a wholly different situation. But Israel will not exist as a Jewish state. It will not. It cannot. Its whole purpose, deluded as it was by the people who actually cooperated with Hitler, in order to get the Jews in so much trouble that they immigrate to Palestine. I mean, all those people did all of these things to get this state started, and the purpose was a safe haven for Jews. Does it look like a safe haven to you today?
It's definitely not a safe haven, and that's because of their own actions and their own extremism. But yeah, I agree with you.
Bingo, bingo. And it's got to change. If they're going to stay, it's got to change. Otherwise, they're gone. And many have already voted. You're probably well aware of that. I'm told over 1 million have already voted of the Jewish citizens of Israel. They've already gone. They're in Europe, they're in America, they're in the northern rim of Africa.
Okay, I've got some breaking news here, which is so that Trump this has been reported by the Wall Street Journal, so I'm asking you the question because it's just come out now. Trump's secret order to file cases. Colonel Lawrence, we could be at risk here, so just to let you know, but this is a Trump's secret order to file cases against journalists reporting on war failures. The Wall Street Journal is reporting, quote, in a private memo to the acting attorney general, Trump demanded aggressive prosecution of cases involving leaks of war information to the media. Trump was particularly enraged by a New York Times article that revealed details of Situation Room meetings and how Bibi Netanyahu persuaded him to bomb Iran. So I guess it's not us who was leaking it, but obviously we were speaking about war failures. What's your thoughts on that? It seems like he's scrambling.
Well, it was actually coming out here last night and late yesterday afternoon. And I think what's happening is he's trying to actually prosecute people who leaked classified information, according to him and according to the people around him, like Hegseth. And there are probably people like that. We started this administration off, you may recall, with Hegseth and who was it, Goldberg, and a couple of other people talking on their accounts in ways that leaked. And there was a real brouhaha about it, but no real damage done to Trump politically. At least he didn't think there was.
Are you talking about the Signal Group where they were planning the
Right.
attack on the Yemeni
Yeah.
Houthis?
Right. And there were
Walsh.
several key people got implicated in that, including Hegseth.
Yeah.
And it sort of blew over. This is not going to blow over, I don't think. Trump wants some of these people to hang. And these are people who were in the administration and leaking. And he wants them to hang. And he wants the publication to hang too.
Yeah, and although I agree with you, and I do think leaks, obviously, if you put yourself in the shoes of Trump, you don't want leaks to occur. You're in a wartime situation, same with Iran, same with anyone. But that being said, if you look at the kind of parameters by which he's getting annoyed by the leak, it is specifically war failures. And so we're seeing a lot of reporting. Was it the New York Times or CBS reported that Iran had now 90% of missile capability. They had about 70 to 90% of the missile launch pads, that the missile depots on the Strait of Hormuz, 30 out of 33 are still operational. And so he's been trying to convince everybody that he's obliterated the Navy, he's obliterated the Air Force. And so it's kind of like, it just confirms his loss, and he is not liking that, and he's stuck. And so doesn't this not seem more like a frantic man who's just trying to scream that he wants everyone to accept that he's winning, but he's not?
Exactly. And I think he's lying. And I think it's reminiscent of Richard Nixon. And it's reminiscent of other presidents, but particularly Nixon, because when the Pentagon Papers came out, for example, that was the feeling that everyone in the administration had. We don't care if it's true. We don't care if all that stuff we lied about was a lie. We want to prosecute the people who are exposing those lies. And Dan Ellsberg almost went to jail. He could have been prosecuted in ways that Trump would have found easy to do. It just didn't happen at that time. And what Dan Ellsberg was telling about was all accurate. Edward Snowden took off, had to go to Russia. Everything Edward Snowden said, as far as I can tell, was accurate. And I was there. Yeah. So the whistleblower environment in the United States of America has grown very cold indeed. There's a book out called Crisis of Conscience, whistleblowing in an age of something. I can't remember what the last word is, but it's a good book, and it has several chapters on nuclear weapons and other aspects of the whistleblowing. But there are very few whistleblowers today because you don't get protection under the whistleblower laws that Congress passed because the administration owns Congress. So if you blow the whistle, you better be prepared to run.
Exactly. And that's what happened to, as you mentioned, Edward Snowden. It happened to Julian Assange and
Yes.
happened to many others who were basically leaking very important information. For example, Snowden was that the American government was surveilling their own population. With Julian Assange, it was many of the war crimes that had occurred during the illegal war in Iraq. So yeah, I agree with you. The environment that's been created isn't great. Last question for you, if that's okay, which is, where do you see the war going now? Do you see a deal being made, or do you think this is going to get kinetic again in that 11 days that you've heard about is going to happen?
I think we have two possibilities. One is, or reasonable mutations of each. One is Trump gets a deal and throws it up and says, I got a deal, and calls it quits and just leaves Netanyahu to stew in his own juices. Or we go to a full out war again. And I would, if I were betting my life on it, I would probably bet on the latter because that's Trump.
Highly likely, unfortunately. It does seem like it's more likely that it's going to be kinetic than not. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, thank you so much. The very first time we've had you on, where can people find you? Because it's not easy to find you. I was looking myself. I was looking at your Twitter. You don't have X. Where can people find your work?
The Eisenhower Media Network. Just Google EisenhowerMediaNetwork.org.
Okay, so it's the Eisenhower Media Network, and they're able to find your work. And you got a regular Substack there, or you post regularly there?
No, we post regularly there.
Brilliant. Okay, we'll get people to follow that. But thank you so much for taking your time out. We really enjoyed this conversation, and we'd love to get you back on again.
Thanks for having me. Be glad to come back.
Honor and a privilege. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you. That was Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. Do give him a follow. Go to the Eisenhower Media Network. Check out what he's got to say. I know I enjoyed that conversation. It's a different perspective. Let's put it that way. A different viewpoint. Like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree with him? He thinks that America has only enough supply in the Middle East for 11 days. I thought they had a lot longer. When I was looking at the supply personally, I thought they could go for 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, a bit longer. But he only thinks 11 days. This is interesting. So let's see what you guys think in the comments. What do you think is going to happen? Is it going to be escalation? He also said if nukes are going to be used, they're going to be used. 30 nukes are going to be used if that was the case. Let's see what happens. He thinks it's more likely that there's going to be war rather than peace. And he says they're going to really essentially blitz Iran for 11 days with a huge amount of onslaught of ordnance in order to cause as much civilian pain and suffering as possible. It's very heartbreaking to hear, but this is his thoughts. Like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribe. On this channel, you need to have your notifications on because I know a lot of people end up going to the second channel to try and find us and then are not aware that we're live. So you need to, in the moral resistance, because we are the moral resistance, you need to have the notifications on. So you're ready. We've got so many great interviews lined up. Tomorrow, we've got really good interviews lined up. Friday, we've got really good interviews lined up. And then I need to plan the rest of the week. I've not done that yet. But that being said, I'm always like 2 days in advance. I noticed I used to plan like 2 weeks in advance, and it was like I realized it just doesn't work in this game. Like you gotta just plan 1-2 days in advance, sometimes 3 days, because people just have so many bookings. If you leave it too late, you're just not gonna get there. So we've got some great people coming on. The next interview is gonna be Fiona Diamond. I can't remember her middle name. She's got a middle name. What is it? Fiona Rose Diamond. And just to let you know, she was arrested in the United Kingdom. She was arrested because she was just taking a train casually. I think she's practicing to be a lawyer, but I could be wrong on that. And she just traveling the train in the United Kingdom, had the gall the temerity, the chutzpah to speak about a topic that you cannot speak about, which is the Holocaust. By the way, denying the Holocaust was never illegal in the United Kingdom, but I guess they are trying to make it illegal because apparently she spoke about it. I don't know what she said. We're going to ask her these questions. And because of that, they said that she has partaken in a hate crime for intellectually discussing something, and she was arrested. This is the situation we've got. What does someone say here? Say what? Same thing happened to me about needing to resubscribe. What do you mean? Has people's subscriptions been removed or something? That's weird. I had to resubscribe to your channel. I was subbed. Oh my God. They're unsubscribing people from our channel. Oh my God. This is what I mean. They try to take your boy down. This is why you need to subscribe. Have your notifications on and press all. Don't let them do this. Don't let them end this movement. They're going to try everything. You know, Netanyahu had a meeting with Google Corporation. We know that the X algorithm was changed by those in charge of X. Do not let them win. Stay frosty. Stay fighting. And actually make sure you got your notifications on. And also, and a very important thing, and I was thinking about this a lot. Like, a lot of people, and this is why I like David Icke. Because one of the things he said, which I agree with, is those in power, the oligarchs, the millionaire class, the billionaire class, they want to tell you you do not have power. That you do not have autonomy. That you cannot cause change. But they are wrong. They want you to feel helpless, but you have more power than anyone else. And something he said very importantly, and I agree with it. The entire structure of society is built on conformity. It's built on you conforming to the rules, you agreeing to abide by the rules, you agreeing to follow the rules, and you will do that. No doubt about it. But the people are always more than those in power. The people have more strength physically, mentally, socially than all those in power. Now, I'm not saying that you should do anything criminal. No, I am a law-abiding citizen. I'm a nerd. But never ever let them make you think or make you believe that you have no power of change. You have the power to change everything. You have a power to decline. You have a power to say no. If someone said to me in 2023, speaking about Israel, speaking about Zionism would be the norm, I would have said it's not possible. When 2023, when I was talking about the Muslim-Christian alliance, when 2023, when I was talking about Zionism, we thought it wasn't possible. They were coming after us. They would keep us in a state of, well, they wanted to try and keep us in a state of fear, but we don't fear anything. And so in 2 years, we managed to change the entire political paradigm, the entire political narrative, where now people know that you can speak against these people. People know that these people are a problem to society. And it's the same with those in power. Those in power do not have our interest in heart. They don't care about us. And we can push for change, for there is more of us than there is of them. They may pay some people out. They may control people through these social media screens, through these television screens, these mediums of manipulation and control. But we have something that they don't have. Something they can never take. Although they will attempt to do so, which is our own mind, our own body, and our own souls. And it's our souls and consciousness that is always going to make sure that we're going to fight against them. So yes, we can stand against the tyranny that they're planning against us, the dystopian society that they're going to implement against us, this Palantir state that they're going to force us into, these 15-minute cities, the social credit scores. We will say no. We will decline. We will never, ever conform to what they want. And so when people say that you can't do anything, they it is what it is. They've decided it. No, they can decide what they want. They can plan what they want. And there is no doubt that they have a lot of control. For I do believe that they've directed societies. They've directed ideologies. They've directed philosophies. They've directed religions into the way that they want to do so. But that being said, we always, and I mean always, have the power to fight against them. And I really believe it. And so we'll never, ever stop fighting. We'll always fight against them, and we'll always speak out against them. And this is why we're trying to go into as many platforms as possible, because if the silence is on one, we'll spurt out into another. The silence on the other will come out to the third. They'll never, ever stop us. We'll always, always fight against them. We've got a super chat here. Let me read it. What a powerful interview. Did you see the attack by Fuentes on you and X Spaces last night? He's such a dishonest weasel. Keep up the great work. No, I didn't see that. I didn't know anything about that. But we'll... Okay, I'll have to take a look at that. I didn't know that. Okay, we've got the next interview person on here. Thanks for the super chat, by the way. Hi, Fiona. How you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Not too bad. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great. How are you doing?
Yeah, I can't verbalize it.
Well, let's try.
In shock. I'm exhausted. When's it going to end?
It never ends with them. But let's get into the interview. I just want to welcome Fiona Rose Diamond onto the show. Appreciate her taking her time out to join us. Fiona, I saw a video of you. You were basically traveling on a train, discussing geopolitics, it seems, and you were arrested. What happened?
Well, allegedly, as I arrived, I was in London for a medical appointment and journeying back quite late. Relatively late. So I arrived at South Yorkshire at around about 9, and I was met by British Transport Police as I got off the train. And at first, I mean, I see the police, I know how they move, and they were looking at me. I thought, they're here for me. But I thought, I've been arrested a few times because of my activism. So I thought, is it something, I don't know what it is, And they approached me and said that when they got to it, that a passenger had overheard a conversation I was having with another passenger on the train. They had felt uncomfortable. Those were the specific words in the text and, what the police used to me, that I'd allegedly made reference to the Holocaust and denied the Holocaust. That was the accusation. And I was quite shocked by it because I didn't think it was going to be that, because the majority of the conversation I was having with a random passenger who was quite chatty was mainly about, the green agenda, Oxford 50-minute cities, voting, he just counted votes. And then, right at the end, the topic was, political. It was politically driven conversation about anti-Zionism. And I knew that this guy didn't really understand what I was talking about. So it didn't really go that far. So, yeah, I was shocked by what they actually said that I did, which I didn't do. And the word Holocaust didn't even come up. The word wasn't even said.
What was the conversation? I understand that you were talking about various political issues. You were talking about local politics. But in terms of specifically anti-Zionism, what was the conversation?
When I got home, so because I was quite shocked by this, the first thing that I did when I was in the cab actually was to start to write on my phone what I could recall from the conversation I was having. When I got home, I started writing in my notebook, and I thought, I'm going to get this down now whilst it's fresh. Now, because I'm very aware that this investigation is ongoing, I emailed the British Transport Police to say I want the crime or report reference number. I want to know who's dealing with it, at what stage it's at. They gave me the number and said it's being handed over to an officer in charge who would contact me. So at this point in time, anything that I'm saying I know is going to be watched, because I think this will be about more than a comment on the train. So it's nothing that I wouldn't have tweeted, and it would have been softer than a tweet. So certain things that I said aren't anything, again, I wouldn't say in a public forum or publicly in a social media tweet, very aware of the law. I mean, I study law. I've had interactions with the court, with the police. So I'm reluctant to specifically go into, oh, I said this and he said this and I said that, because I know that they'll be watching. They'll be watching, and they'll use it to try and trip me up later. I know how these people work. But it was about anti-Zionism and me establishing that he didn't even know what Zionism was. And I at one point referenced that I wear rosary beads now, not because I'm Catholic. I was born and raised Catholic, but I remember saying to him, you know, when you're advocating for something, I think that you need to be informed about what you're advocating for. When, you know, so there's contradictions, for example, in the, you know, in rabbinic Judaism about Jesus. So I think, and in general, they're conflicting ideologies. So it was very much like that. And I mean, I recall him being a bit of a fast talker and a bit of a mumbler. And I was being conscious about my volume because I'm quite a loud person. My voice carries, which is a good thing for an activist. I don't need a megaphone. So I had my ear up to the seat a few times, and I was very conscious. I knew that. But I specifically can't say anything apart from the fact that the word Holocaust never came up. I didn't deny it because those are not my beliefs, Suleiman. I wouldn't deny something. I might question outside of this conversation. I might question certain things that we are meant to take as established fact. But that's been what I see as my job for the past 6 years. So I don't take anything at face value. I will question everything. So if this person who allegedly was made uncomfortable and allegedly overheard something that they will frame as anti-Semitic, because denying the Holocaust is not even a crime in England, but they will frame it as anti-Semitic and racially aggravated public order offence. They'll do that regardless. So however they can frame it, they will. But
was this a Jewish person you were speaking to?
I don't know. I don't think so. The strangest thing, in hindsight, I will talk to anybody. I have been through the courts for, you know, my activism for the last 6 years. I'm very experienced in how they operate. We've had people infiltrate the movements, you know, undercover police officers, journalists, that kind of stuff. So we're very aware. But I will speak to anybody. So I will have a conversation with anyone. And I got chatting to this guy on the platform. I asked him, you know, does this train go to Doncaster or whatever? And he was, oh yeah, it does. And that's how we got chatting. But he was lingering behind me, and I thought something prompted me to say something to him. And the police know my psychology. They knew me better than I did in the first couple of years of my activism. So I can't help but think it is potentially a setup. And the person listening, isn't it not strange these days where somebody takes such a long train journey out of London that they don't have headphones? Or I find it strange. So that I clocked a couple of people that I think it was them, and they said him in the text message. So, you know, we know it's a man, but their investigation will include speaking to all of the passengers around me on the train. And I know what they do. So I should imagine that they will be guided and led to say what they need them to say.
But just based on what you're saying, I mean, you were just having a normal geopolitical conversation, right? We see on social media these kind of debates that happen between Muslims and Christians and various other things. So even if, I'm not saying you did this, but even if you were having those conversations, this is prevalent on social media, actually more than being prevalent, it's boosted on social media in order to cause fractures between communities. So what is even the entire logical basis behind basically going after someone who's having geopolitical conversations?
They go after different groups of people at different times. If you think back to 2024, when Tommy Robinson started doing his rallies again, and we saw Southport, horrific things were happening. Some people, some incidents around that you could say were created, or false flags that people, you know, you look at something, you think there's something wrong there. Around that rally, then, you know, we had riots in the summer, and then people were being imprisoned for making, you know, Islamophobic comments and talking about migrant hotels. We've seen that play out. So they were going after the alleged far right at that time, and they will always at some point come after everybody if it doesn't fit their narrative. They will create a narrative. They puppeteer all of us. They're engineering all of this divide. And now we're seeing it. And I think it's quite reasonable for a lot of us to look at what's gone on over the last few years. And if you're informed about any, you know, geopolitical issues with regards to, it's central on Palestine and Israel for a second. You can't look at that and justify what's happening anymore. I don't care what people's beliefs are, religious or otherwise. No one can justify what we've seen play out over the last few years. So people, I think, are naturally having more debate and more, they're being more vocal about it. But if we go down a bit of a deeper conspiracy hole, it's the undeniable control that Zionists, whether Jewish or otherwise, because, we've got the Christian Zionists and we've got, famous people who claim to be Jewish Zionists, but they're not really Jewish or practicing Jews. The control of the media, of the narrative, and just getting away with war crimes. So there's more debate around it, but they're certainly engineering it. They're certainly feeding it. They want us. It serves them, because when we are all arguing with one another, when we are all throwing punches sideways, we're not looking up and seeing who is trying to destroy humanity, who is trying to control us. And what we're seeing play out will come for us. So they don't want us speaking. They want us arguing. They want us scared. They want to make martyrs and examples of people on all sides, because the end goal is this tyrannical digital panopticon. Okay, this is where we're heading. So nobody's essentially safe. They will just teach you to shut up and comply. So that's what I think it's about. And I think, I can't remember what the quote is now about, look at who you can't criticize and you'll know who's in control, however it goes. So this issue now, people are reasonably angry, and I don't agree with any kind of hate that's directed at you because of your race, your faith, or anything. People should be able to believe what they want to believe. People should hold their religious, spiritual beliefs however they want. I've run campaigns, Humanity United, one of them, or United Not Divided, another one, where I said it's not black versus white. It's not faith versus faith. It's not us versus each other. It's humanity versus tyranny. That has been through everything I've ever done. So I'm not anti-Semitic. I can't possibly be. My grandfather was Jewish. He was actually disowned for marrying a Gentile. And I've always loved that love story, because my grandparents got married in 1943 during the war. They both served. And that's, for me, it's always been a love story. It's not been about, disowning a religion. It's been more about the love that they had was that strong, That to me is humanity. They want us divided. They want us arguing, and they want to make examples of people. And currently the hot topic is anti-Semitism.
So you're Jewish and you're getting arrested for denying the Holocaust. What's going
technically,
on?
I don't think I can claim it because it's matriarchal, isn't it? It's got to follow the mother's bloodline, and it was my grandfather. But yes, Sydney, he was, and he served in World War II, and he was disowned, and it's a sad thing because, the Orthodox beliefs, I understand it, but I never got to talk to my grandfather directly. Obviously, my father told me things, but my grandfather died in 1967, so I never got to have a conversation with him. And now I sit here, and my father passed away as well. So I would love to be able to now have this conversation and with people that lived through certain things. But I think, my grandfather couldn't believe, he wasn't faithful in anything. He didn't convert to anything. He couldn't believe that certain things, that God might let certain things happen. He saw the atrocities. He saw what happened to good men and soldiers in World War II. And I think that he was the ultimate skeptic about faith in general. So yeah, it is borderline that as well, especially when I've made very clear, I listen to, Jewish Voice for Peace or a Voice of Rabbis, and I'm not saying anything different about Zionism than they're saying. Really, I might go a little bit further sometimes because I'm looking at the overall agenda as well. I'm looking at the control agenda and who's where. What's Larry Fink? What's George Soros? It all ties together. We should still be able to have that conversation, even if it's only conjecture, because debate and conversation is what gets people, it's what informs people. And when they're trying to shut that down and they minimize and they make Zionism, we see playing out right now. As far as I'm concerned, the reality of what Zionism is playing out. It's genocide. It's happening. It's ethno-supremacy. It's racism. That's what it is. It's ethnic cleansing, and it has been for the last 80 odd years and before. But they say it's about self-determination for peoples without a home. But then you listen to some of the rabbis and they're telling you, well, no, it goes against our, our faith in that we made this contract. They had sort of 3 promises that we would never rebel against a nation or rebel against God. Let's have the conversation. And this is the kind of conversation I'm having with people. So I don't really understand. I mean, I do understand, because it's an agenda, isn't it? And I do believe I still have a target on my back, and they don't want an educated activist, and I'm studying law, and I feel like they have their sights on my future. So this won't just be about a conversation on the train. They will go through tweets. They will build a case. And as we speak right now, someone's been knocking at my door for the entire time we've been on here.
Really?
Now my housemates wouldn't. I've got literally 2 housemates, well, 3 that I speak to. We're in self-contained studios, and someone's been knocking on my door. They hear me, that I'd be on the phone. So I'm going to send you a text. The minute I get off this, I'll send you a text and let you know exactly who that was, or is still knocking.
Well, no problem. Of course, we want to keep you safe. We don't want these Zionists to do that. And look, this is very important. That look, Zionism is different to any kind of religion. Zionism is a political ideology. It's a political ideology we all disagree with. And David Miller won a court case which specifically defined that Zionism is a political ideology, and you're able to basically go against it. And what is part of Zionism is Jewish supremacy. And as you said, you could be a white supremacist, you could be a Jewish supremacist, you could be a Muslim supremacist, you could be an Arab supremacist. And you mentioned as well, you could be a Christian Zionist, you could be a Jewish Zionist. We've been calling out Arab Muslim Zionists more than anyone. Look at the Gulf states are examples of that. So what do you think the real reason is for this? This seems like, again, and this is the problem I have with Zionism, is a direct attack on Western civilization. If there's something that is unique, I would say to an extent, about the United States of America and the UK, although they're in different positions and they're losing these identities at a lot different rates. So in the UK, we're losing it a lot faster than they are in the United States of America, although they're losing it. Is this direct attack on Western civilization, on free speech? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I absolutely do think that that's what it is. And I think that all of us essentially are being puppeteered. Like I said before, they've got everyone looking at mass illegal migration, which in my opinion, I'll say that I believe that this is an engineered destabilization. This is how they get people to get frustrated, get angry, lose their pride and identity. We've seen destabilization used, the West against in the Middle East. They've done it for a couple of 100 years at least. So they know what they're doing. And George Soros, again, Zionist, who said that Europe needs to absorb 1 million refugees, at least 1 million refugees every year from 2015. Well, how do you know that many refugees are going to be generated, or whatever the correct word would be? How can you say that? They're destabilizing. It's engineered. It's what they want to do. So, and then this is where it gets more complicated for me, because I look at the control that Israel has with surveillance and technology, and the people that run certain corporations, banking, and all of this stuff that people want to see as separate but is connected, and how most of those people are, well, I don't even believe a lot of them are actually Jewish. I think most of them are probably satanic, but Zionists, and obviously all for what's gone on, not only over the last 3 or 4 years, but over the last, several decades or longer than that. What right did we have? What right did our country have to say that, okay, the British mandate, we're going to basically give, Palestine to the Jews because they need a homeland. Sorry, when they'd actually lived very, very peacefully together for the longest time. But it's the control agenda as far as I see it. I don't want to get too far, because it's things that I have not really sort of vocalized about Zionism and the control agenda, and owning Hollywood, media, banking. You've got all these big hedge fund companies. You can't separate it now. It's too obvious. We can't criticize Israel, even though legally we can. We can't criticize Zionism, even though legally we can. So I think that they're going to make anti-Zionism anti-Semitic, so then they can crack down. I think that's what their aim is, and I do think it's control. Get us arguing, getting white British people, or just British people in general, hating their Muslim neighbours. They want us fighting with each other over faith, race, and political ideology, and literally not looking up and thinking, wow, we've got this surveillance state that's rolled out, and most of the technology is coming from Israel, which is not a coincidence. Where did cloud seeding come from? You've got to connect the dots, or at least be able to have the conversation to connect the dots and be able to have the thoughts and question this. So I believe that there's people in control, and you've got Netanyahu with an ICC arrest warrant walking around, going to America. They're showing us, aren't they? Who's really controlling everything?
Yeah, so I guess the other question I got, just going back to your cases, and by the way, I agree with what you said there, but coming back to the case is this. The how did they, first of all, you've been arrested, have you been charged?
No, I'm under investigation. So because I've got a 10-minute video with the police, or 15 minutes, something like that, I'm very familiar with how they work. I have convictions. So I've got from my activism for breaching the COVID regulations, organising protests and gathering, other public order offences for speech, megaphone, or paint bombing number 10 was one of my favourites, and contempt of court, all in the last 6 years. I'm very aware of how the system works, and I self-represent. So my questions to the police are preemptive. What will you do if I don't give you my details right now? If I just walked away, what would you do? And obviously they told me, well, we'll put you under arrest, but only because we need your details. This is being investigated. And people would say, don't give them. It's 9 o'clock at night and I've just got off a train from an oncology appointment in London. So they can investigate what they want to investigate. I said, upload that body worn footage and my face, you'll know who I am. So yeah, they told me that if I obviously didn't provide my details, I would be put under arrest to obtain those details. Despite knowing who I was, they just needed to confirm it, and that they're actively investigating. They told me they'll be speaking to all the passengers that were sat around me on the train, and I emailed British Transport Police for the information, and I actually emailed again today saying, now can you tell me who the officer in charge is, because I want to keep ahead rather than waiting for a knock at the door, or an invitation for an interview. They could just send me a charge in the post, and that let them do what they will do. But they will be looking at probably everything that I've said and framing it as anti-Semitic, because they know that Holocaust denial is not. And I don't even deny the Holocaust. I question certain things. I didn't even on the train, but I don't even deny that something happened. But I should have said, which Holocaust? The one we're seeing play out right now in Palestine? That one? That genocide? That people, we talk about like it's just started, go back to the Nakba. I should, there's things I wish I'd said to them. So they're actively investigating, and I didn't get a response today. So for me, I don't like that sign, which is what's concerned me about the knock at the door that's stopped for the last 2 minutes, but I'll be recording when I go and open that.
Well, you could do it while you're live just to make sure you're okay, but just
I don't want to show you my studio. It's such a mess and it's tiny. So I'm literally sat on my bed in the window at the moment.
Right,
it's
no
terrible.
worries, no
I don't live that well, mate.
No, all good. So in terms of, are you on bail at the moment?
No, because I wasn't put under arrest. I wasn't interviewed or anything. So they didn't take me to the station. It was dealt with on the platform. He got freaked out when he thought I was going to run. I said, well, take my case. I said, I'm going out for a smoke. I said, you can carry my case out. Take my case. So he carried my case outside and was really worried that I was going to go, but it was a heavy case as well. So, but yeah, and then it's just that was it. But if I hadn't given my details, obviously that's the way it would have gone. But what's the point? The result is the same. It's just a few hours in custody or overnight that I don't need. So, yeah.
True. And how did you get to from a situation where you have this conversation, and as soon as you arrive at the station, they basically arrest you? Did the person call the police straight away while you were there? Like, what happened?
They texted when they were on the train at whatever point they felt they needed to, but must have been quite quick because the Zionism conversation didn't come up until quite, towards the end of the journey. The train was ever so slightly delayed. It seems like a few people in the carriage knew what was going on, because I was sat right by the door, like on the first set of seats. You get on a train carriage, I was sat right there. And the passenger I was talking to, having a chat with, was in front of me on the 2 seats in front of me. And other people moved down to the other end of the carriage. So rather than going to the door that was right next to them, they all went the other way. And I thought, what's going on? I sensed something was strange. So, and also, how did they know that I was getting off where I was getting off? I must have said at some point, to this person on the train, but completely honestly, I don't believe in coincidences. I have annoyed Tommy Robinson, who did a video about me, a couple of months ago that I didn't even see, but he's ranting about me in the back of a car because I called him I called him a state asset and a Zionist shield. But I've called him that for years. I've never liked Tommy Robinson. I didn't like being associated with him in 2021 because he sort of co-opted a little bit of what we call the freedom movement on the back of sharing my work. And I was like, oh no, Tommy Robinson's sharing it. That's not good. And they did a newspaper article saying that I was linked to Tommy Robinson. I was a far right anti-vaxxer or whatever.
What's the freedom movement for the audience?
Sorry. Okay. So the freedom movement, it was born, I think probably before, but in 2020, there was many people turned into millions of people, over a couple of years that were against the lockdowns initially, the legislation that enforced the lockdown. So the Coronavirus Act, any of the mandates that we basically said were completely unscientific and baseless. And we were certainly against the jab mandates. And it was essentially a human rights movement where we were all being censored. We were being arrested. We were being silenced. There was no debate. And then, of course, it sort of ramped up when the jabs were rolled out. So people were fighting something tangible when we were fighting out of lockdown. So most of my convictions in the early days, 2020 to 22, were organizing gatherings in. I've literally been convicted of organizing a gathering of more than 2, 6, and 30 people. And I was arrested for just gathering in a group of more than 2. So, and convicted of that. So the freedom movement was born in lockdown.
Okay.
And yeah, so the state overreach, the complete imposition, the baseless science it was, I think we can probably all agree looking back now that it was at least questionable. I hope that everybody's going, well, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have potentially worn a mask because the hypnovision told me to.
But just coming back to Tommy Robinson. So you think he may be behind this?
I think, look, I do believe that Tommy Robinson is absolutely a state asset and Zionist shill. I think the other thing I would call him is a stakeholder. So I think he's protected. I think he's doing a job for the state. His job is to inflame the right, to divide people, and ultimately to lead people towards a point where civil unrest, they want civil unrest so they can crack down. The surveillance state they've been rolling out is entirely for the control. So we'll see martial law style policing because people will get to such a tipping point. They're so angry. I believe he's there to divide, distract. Therefore, we are easier to conquer. He's deflecting. He's not talking about what really we should be talking about, the surveillance state, digital ID, that kind of stuff. That's where the freedom movement's at the moment, the way digital ID, objecting, resisting. So Tommy Robinson, yes, there's no, look at he's always been funded by Zionist Jews. He's always been funded. Like who gave him a big £100,000 or $100,000 donation? Shillman.
Who's
recently
he's always funded him for almost a decade now.
But to raise that money after it's so conflicting. It's like he's also there to make people lose faith in protest, to make people lose faith in donating. His job is tenfold, but predominantly, yes, I believe he's working for the state of Israel and the powers that be. And it's his job to divide us, to get us to hate each other, to have us hating Muslims, for goodness sake. And then I think back to the Ottoman Empire. You had Jew living next to Muslim, living next to Christian, living next to atheist people. And then we're told stories about the fall of the Ottoman Empire. We're meant to believe it. We can live peacefully together whilst believing different things because we've shown historically that is possible. True. Islam is, in Tommy Robinson's view, is the biggest threat. No, it isn't. They're using it as a tool right now to divide us and to distract us. Oh, and then they'll bring in the big guns.
Well, I totally agree with you. I think Tommy Robinson's job is exactly what you said. This is why he runs away from me in a debate. We had a debate set up in 2024, and then he ran away from it at the last minute. It was completely set up. He asked me, I said, anytime, any place, anywhere. We agreed. He said, I can't go to the US. So we said Europe. We said he wasn't willing to, and I was willing to travel. He said he doesn't want to do it online. I was willing to travel. He wasn't unwilling to do it. And then just now when I was in the United States of America, we have mutual friends, Fresh and Fit. And they were like, look, Tommy's here. Let's set up the debate. I said, let's do it. And he just ran away. So this guy's afraid. He has no ideas or thoughts. As you said, he's completely funded by the Zionists. as you said, Robert Shulman's been funding him for a very, very long time. Just bringing it back to your case, because we've just got a couple of minutes left, is what's your thoughts about what's going to happen next?
If they take it further, they will have to frame it as anti-Semitic. I think that they will have people on the train that will be potentially sort of coached in what to say and how to say it. I've had this happen to me before, statements that have been changed because of police. I've got it all under my bed. They've tried to fit me up, essentially. So I think that it will be, more framed as intentionally trying to offend someone or harass or alarm somebody. Because there's no intent. You've overheard a conversation. I've not said anything directly to anybody or intentionally to do anything, but they'll frame it how they need to frame it, and they will build a case based on some of what I might have said online. They probably won't be successful. I'm not going to have the Free Speech Union behind me, am I? Because they're funded by Zionists, so that's gone. Probably do it myself. But I think that it's a wait and see situation. Whether they put me through this uncertainty, which is possible that they just keep me waiting and waiting and waiting before they send me a letter saying, "Oh, we're not taking it any further." But we have obviously protected rights. So it's great about that case about Zionism, all right? But and also Holocaust denial not even being a crime. But people need to understand we do have that freedom of speech, but people say it's inalienable. It isn't. It's always been limited. The state can clamp down on what they want, when they want, in any way that they want. So our freedom of speech isn't absolute. And they, like I say, they'll target various people at various times. We'll see what happens. It's a waiting game, but I will be chasing them. That's for sure.
Well, we're looking forward to that. Just make sure you're safe as well. I'm watching my text message once you open your door.
I will.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. Where can people find you? I know your Twitter handle is Covey Leaks.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Fiona Rose Diamond. Where else can people find you?
Yeah, Covey. I'm on Instagram. So Instagram, Facebook, Fiona Rose Diamond. You'll find me. But X, trying to build, because I feel like that's where we can have this kind of conversation. No one on Facebook is really that interested in this, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's a weird one. So yeah, at Covey Leaks, COVILEAKS. Covey Leaks, like WikiLeaks, but about COVID.
Well, that's worth leaking about. Appreciate your time taking it. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you joining us. We'll definitely get you back on again, especially if there's an update. Thank you.
I've loved it, mate. I've always wanted to chat to you, honestly.
Oh, well, it was great having you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir.
Appreciate it. That was Fiona Rose Diamond. That was brilliant, right? That was a great interview. Make sure you're following her. Her handle is Covey Leaks. Make sure you follow her on Covey Leaks. Let me know your thoughts. First of all, like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. This is crazy. She's like a Jewish woman, Catholic. They're going after her for what? Having a conversation on a train. It's crazy. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think? Is this the end of free speech in the United Kingdom? I mean, people talk about there being no free speech in the United Kingdom, which is true. But what they don't tell you is there's no free speech if you speak against Zionism. There's no free speech when you speak against Israel. There's no free speech when you speak against those in power, but they want you to believe it's the Muslims or the Christians. But we know who's really in power. And Fiona Rose Diamond is a great example of that. Someone who is, you can see, she's all about, standing up against those in power. She's had a few incarcerations, but all of them have been based on activism. And now she's being targeted for speaking out against Zionism. So that is an example of these people. Like, comment, and share. Subscribe. Okay, next we have on, it's a very short interview, just 30 minutes. We got Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Agalair. We're just waiting for him to join. He's normally on time, so this is unusual for him. It is 9:30, right? It is 4:30 in the US. Yep. Okay, cool. So we are waiting for him to join. Someone said, can't we have a conversation anymore? Scary. Yeah, I mean, we can't. Let me see if there's any super chats while we're waiting for Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Agalair. Yeah, that was a great interview. She was good, wasn't she, Fiona? Really good. I know she listens to the spaces a lot because she told me. So this is it. They're going after our people. They're going after our community. She's a big supporter of the moral resistance. She's a follower of our spaces. She listens to them all the time, but they're coming after her. Why? A very smart, eloquent woman. As much as a woman can be. As much as a woman can be. Jokes, jokes, jokes. Jokes, jokes, jokes. Don't crash out. But why are they going after her? Why are they targeting her? This is crazy. Okay, we're just waiting for Lieutenant Colonel. He's normally never late. Let me ask him. Oh, I forgot to. Oh, I did send him the link. Okay, 1 second. Let me try. 1 second. He said he's getting an error. So I thought he's never late. He's never late. So let me just send this again. That was the same code. Okay. That was a great interview. Make sure you're following her. Fiona Rose Diamond. Kobe Leaks. Okay, brilliant. Okay. Hi, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Agalair. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Okay, I just want to welcome Lieutenant Colonel. Oh, sorry, I just want to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Agalair onto the show. He is a Green Beret. He has served the country for decades, and he has been given his geopolitical analysis. And if there's anybody who has really amazing knowledge when it comes to specific military technical knowledge, he's the best guy. So thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great. I was actually listening quite intently to the previous guest. That was a great interview.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's unfortunate what's happened to her. Our free speech has been taken away.
Yeah, she's a warrior.
No doubt. So, Anthony Agalair, I want to ask you a question. If we look at right now what's happening, let's take one element at a time in terms of the breaking news. So the first piece of breaking news is Trump is in China. He's talking about making, he's talking about various things. What do you think that summit's about? Do you think it has any relation to the Iran war?
Well, the formal agenda that has been published by the White House upon the landing in Beijing was that there's going to be talking about Iran, talking about trade, talking about the future of Taiwan, and oil prices in China. So all of these are intrinsically linked in terms of what could be on the table for the discussion with Taiwan now that China knows that the U.S. Navy is overstretched and somewhat degraded. So that will be intrinsically linked to the conversation about Iran, which will surely be about a ceasefire or when a ceasefire will be accepted on the heels of President Trump rejecting the latest peace agreement that was submitted by Iran. So Trump is going into this discussion with Xi Jinping with a war that's very much still on, a ceasefire that is on life support while hostilities continue. So it's going to be, I believe it will be a tense conversation.
No doubt. It will be a tense conversation. I guess the question mark becomes, though, do you think China pressures Iran to make a deal, or do you think China just tells America, look, you need to make a deal and you need to kind of acquiesce to the demands of Iran?
Well, I think that Xi Jinping's first proposal would be that the United States accept an agreement, or at least come to the table with some level of compromise or flexibility. To be fair, Iran has proposed a maximalist negotiation offering, but so too has Trump. That rarely leads to negotiation. So I do think that Xi will probably offer to Trump to hey, accept something soon, or this is going to draw us in more directly, because we know that it is hitting China's oil prices quite hard, and we know that it is having an impact on China. And I think that it's going to be with this rare opportunity to have the president of the United States sitting down with Xi Jinping in person. There's going to be some hard talk on the future of these negotiations, and I think that that more came out of the conversation between the Iranian foreign minister last week than China has led on, and I think that there's probably going to be some pretty direct, hey, you gotta end this or else type of conversation.
Okay. And now another piece of report we just got was from the Wall Street Journal, and it's been reported that Trump is not happy. He's furious, and he wants to begin litigation and investigations into people who reported that the US is losing this war, people who leaked that information, and people like me and you, Anthony Aguilar, who've been talking about how the US is losing this war. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's it's not surprising. What I'll say that anything that I've shared or discussed is simply a matter of, to me, obvious observation. No leaked information required to see the obvious. And the conversations we're having and the facts are, from a strategic context, if you simply line up the purpose of war, the end states of war, the objectives of war, the United States at this time is losing this war. If the president of the United States wants to deny that or punish those that state it clearly, that will only continue to lead us down the road of defeat. I haven't said we're defeated yet, but at this point in time, we are certainly on the side of failing to meet the military objectives, and that's the report card coming directly from what the president has told us himself. That if it was about nuclear capability, well, that still exists. It was about Strait of Hormuz control, well, they'll still control it. It was about eliminating any missile capability. They actually have about probably closer to 80%, according to the latest intelligence analysts. So by the president's own report card, he is all F's in the bracket. So perhaps he should investigate himself.
That's a good one. Yeah. And so, of course, look, it's just logical. We haven't got leaks. We're just analyzing what's going on based on the information that is publicly available. But what it does demonstrate, right, is Trump isn't happy because he keeps telling his base, he's destroyed Iran's navy, he's destroyed Iran's air force, they have no missiles left. And yet report after report after report, whether it's from CBS News, whether it's from NBC, whether it's from Wall Street Journal, whether it's from New York Times, all of them saying Iran has 70 to 90% of its missile capability left, 70 to 90% of its missile launch pads left, 30 out of 33 different missile places on the Strait of Hormuz are still functioning. And so he's not happy because this just goes against everything he's saying. And it seems like he's frustrated and he's starting to lose his mind because his narrative isn't working, right?
The narrative is certainly not working, especially when you look at the pump or prices in the grocery store that require sustained operations for things that come through the Strait of Hormuz, like gas and oil and helium. So the price of everything is going up. We're now $29 billion in the hole on this particular conflict. That's how much epic fury cost us. And what I would remind everyone is that the National Defense Authorization Act authorized to the Department of Defense $169 billion on the 1st of October. And then shortly after the shots were fired on the 28th of February, later in March, the Secretary of Defense went back and asked for another $200 billion. So when you consider what's been put into the bank, this $29 billion, meaning cost, is outside of what was already allocated in terms of it was unforecasted and unrequested. So when you look at that $200 billion that was requested, we burned through that. So now we're going into cost, which is not being asked for because we haven't budgeted for it. This is like, it's like you're taking out of your savings account to move into your checking account to pay for your high interest credit card on your high interest personal loan. That's what we're doing now with what we're spending. So that 29 billion in the hole, that's fresh as we go into now the new Operation Sledgehammer.
Yeah. We just had Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson on before you, and he said that according to his institute, whose name slips my mind, but he said they've basically worked out that it's actually $250 billion this war's cost up to now in total. So that's shocking.
My calculation is close to the same when you consider the replenishment of systems, the cost of missiles, the cost of rockets, the cost of defenses, the cost of moving soldiers from locations to other locations to house them in alternative means, medical costs, hospital costs, redeployment costs, repair costs. Yeah, we are definitely in the ballpark of that number. 29 billion, still no small amount. That's what at least they're admitting to. So of course the number's a lot worse.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, another report that we had was about the UAE. Apparently, Netanyahu took a flight to the UAE to visit MBZ during the war. What's your thoughts on, again, another example of the UAE being in bed with Israel?
So one thing that I said in the very beginning of this war is that regardless of how it ends up, win, lose, or draw, it will reshape relations in the region. Now we know that there are direct relations and lines of communication between Iran, China, always had with Pakistan, but those are certainly strengthening, more so with, in the greater East and Central Asia axis, if you will. But then we have relationships like the UAE and Israel that have grown from this, that we're seeing a realignment of alliances and partnerships. And I do think that the relationship between the UAE and Israel will continue to progress, to increase in their partnership. The UAE has simply now become a statelet of the of Israel, and looking at Saudi Arabia, where that relationship is now also potentially being discovered or developed. You have unusual bedfellows that are starting to build relationships in the region, which is reshaping. It's reshaping the dynamics of the region militarily, economically, politically. The UAE is no longer part of OPEC.
No doubt. Now, there's another report that came out just today, I believe, and it said the US Air Force has lost a third of its MQ-9 fleet in Iran. If you can explain what MQ-9 fleet is, it losing it, and then and then I'll ask more questions. Sorry, go ahead.
So your MQ-9 is your workhorse of the U.S. drone fleet. This MQ-9 can be used for surveillance, constant and persistent observation and surveillance, reconnaissance, target strikes. It can fire Hellfire missiles. It can fire a variety of different weapon systems. It is the ubiquitous workhorse of the drone army. Now, when we look at how many we've lost, here is something that was kind of buried in the news in early February. The big brother to the MQ-9 Reaper is the MQ-4 Triton. It's much bigger. It's more advanced. It's a lot more expensive. We lost one over the Strait of Hormuz, and it didn't go down. It wasn't destroyed. Iran hacked the code, took control of it, landed it in Isfahan, and then re-engineered or reverse engineered the M-code sequence coding. So basically, it's like if somebody steals your garage door opener, figures out the code, they can now open your garage from a distance away because they figured out how the garage communicates. That's what they did. They now have figured out what band and how our MQ-9s communicate to where they can either lock in on them to take them down. They can fry their communication so they crash somewhere. They can even take control of them depending on how close they are and how much fuel they may or may not have, and actually bring them in and land them. I think out of the MQ-9s that we've lost, not all of them have crashed or been destroyed. I do believe that some of them have been seized and captured by Iran, and they are being reversed engineered, just like we did with the Shahed and then came out with this new Lucas drone. They too are reverse engineering our MQ-9s, what they learned from when they got a hold of the Triton back in February.
Okay. And now another report we had was that the US is running out of a large number of the, obviously we already know the defense interceptor missiles, but they're also running out of the offensive weapons.
Yeah.
Looking at how depleted the overall supply is, how bad is it for United States of America? And let's say they did go for, a bombing campaign again for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. What supplies would they have left?
Well, see, this is where things get a lot riskier. When it comes to standoff munitions like the SM3 or SM6 or JASM or PRISM or ATACM, we are critically low on those. I think the numbers in our prisms, we probably couldn't afford to fire another one, or we will be at critical shortage. ATACMs are always in shortage. They're very expensive, and of some of our other missiles that we know, the SM6, the SM3 have a lead time for production from anywhere from 18 months to 24 months, and those things cost about $6 million a pop, and we're short on those. So what does that mean then if we want to have an effective campaign? It's going to be a lot more actual aircraft, not drones or missiles or long-range standoff munitions, but aircraft having to fly in to hit deeper laden strategic targets. Has Iran moved things from the coast deeper inland because they know that that provides them defense? Absolutely. So if we want to go after it with F-35s, F-22s, B-1s, B-2s, or B-53s, or B-52s, excuse me, we're going to have to fly deeper in. That puts the fleet at great risk because we do know that Iran does possess the ability to successfully hit various aircraft with their manpad and still existing air defense capability. We haven't obliterated their air defense capability. So in order to do that, we're going to have to put pilots in seats over Iranian airspace. Then you have the risk of shoot down. Then you have the risk of loss. And each step of that only leads to further escalation day by day.
And that's the biggest problem, right? That we're kind of going towards this escalation. I think I spoke to you throughout the war, and one of the things you felt like was that in the end, this is going to escalate because there's not going to be a way out. And to be honest, more people are moving towards that position again. It seems like the parties are so far apart that the only thing we're going to expect is escalation after escalation. And when Trump comes back, unless there's some kind of breakthrough in China, it's highly likely he's going to start a bombing campaign again, right? But if he does, and I guess this is the second element of the question, if he does, he's going to be in a much worse situation than he is now. And then he'll have nothing to negotiate with, right, in terms of leverage perspective.
Well, every day as U.S. Navy vessels sit outside of the Strait of Hormuz in the distant blockade, we're spending millions and millions of dollars. Every day that the Strait of Hormuz remains under the control of Iran, they grow stronger and stronger and stronger, and the prices of oil continue to go up and will. Every day that goes by is not a benefit to the administration in trying to find an end to this war, but also trying to find a position of leverage or advantage. And I liken it to the Chinese finger trap. And excuse the pun that Trump is visiting China this week, but in a Chinese finger trap, you get your finger stuck in there, and the harder you pull, the more you're stuck, and the more you push in and you try to pull out, then you're stuck even more. We are in that quagmire right now that there is very little we can do to put pressure that's going to get us out, and there's very little we can do to back out that's going to get us out. We are going to have to meet hard in the middle with negotiations that may not be beneficial to the United States. And if we do not, this conflict will continue, and Iran will continue to maintain the advantage. And that's not knocking America or propaganda. That is just the truth of the facts of military and strategic operations.
No doubt. Now, in terms of coming back to the kind of overarching situation that we're in, we're kind of in this kind of quagmire where the US is in a blockade, the world is in a financial crisis, and in reality, Trump isn't being harmed. He's financially benefiting. Do you think Trump is going to at some point become pressured in order to make a move, or do you think that the American public is kind of ambivalent to what's happening?
Well, we clearly know that Donald Trump does not care about the financial concerns or the financial issues of Americans. He said that, his words, not mine, that he's not concerned about the financial situation of Americans. So, I think more and more, as the price of gas becomes nearly unaffordable for some and in some parts of the country, and the price of, let's not forget the price of diesel. The price of diesel has gone up so much, and diesel is what fuels our fleet that takes food and things around the country. Trains are also diesel. So when you consider all these things that require diesel, and JP8, which is a diesel derivative, also is what's required to fuel all of our aircraft, and the price of that is going up. It's becoming untenable. Do I think that more and more Americans are starting to recognize the they and us and the disparity of wealth between, hey, we're paying for this war and it hurts, and you're saying that the it doesn't bother you? It doesn't bother you, Mr. Ballroom? It doesn't bother you, Mr. Bedminster Golf Course? Well, of course it doesn't, but it bothers the rest of us.
No doubt, no doubt. And it seems like he's not bothered at all. But now coming back to when we look at the war in terms of this escalation that's occurring, you see in the Gulf states, they kind of, we always get mixed reports with them. Either they want to get part of the war or they don't want to be part of the war. But it does seem like we just see it logically. They don't want to leave the Strait in a situation where it's fully controlled by Iran, because a fully controlled Iran Strait makes them basically a powerhouse within the region. Same with Israel. Is there a scenario where Trump can push back against someone so I think he can push back against the Gulf states, but could he push back against Netanyahu? And what I mean by that is, we know Netanyahu is not going to agree to a deal. We know he wants to continue to expand in Lebanon. Can he bring Netanyahu in and force him into making a deal?
With the Gulf states, you can only sit on the fence for so long. That will change. What sides they fall to in terms of who they will defend or who they will attack is yet to be known. But you can only fence it for so long. With Netanyahu, I think that Trump's flight back from China is going to be a long, arduous, frustrated flight on trying to figure out what to do. Because I think Netanyahu is still expecting, hey, you're Israel first, right? But I think that Xi Jinping is going to put something on the table in terms of an ultimatum or a red line that Donald Trump cannot nor should not ignore. So when Donald Trump gets back, no doubt one of his first calls, if he's not already calling him from his hotel, will be to Bibi Netanyahu to say, what do I do? Here's the offering. What do I accept? Do we bring China? Do we bring Russia potentially? How does this look? Well, of course, Netanyahu is going to say, press ahead, press ahead. We've got wars to fight in Lebanon and Gaza. You take care of Iran. And unfortunately, this president will likely side with Netanyahu over the American people.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. It does seem like he will do that. And that's why I don't think there's going to be an end to the war, because if there could be a deal, if there was a possibility, Israel kind of makes that totally impossible, right? And so I guess last question to you before we let you go. Where do you foresee things going now? Trump comes back from this meeting in China. He's took all his oligarch friends. It seems like it's a meeting for those who have wealth and power and money. It's not really for the normies. Where do you think, when he comes back, what do you think he does? Do you think he'll be so excited about the amount of money he's going to make, he may try and pull out of Iran, or do you think that now things are going to escalate?
Well, I think that all of the oligarchs and moguls that he took with him, from the Elon Musks to the oil magnates and everyone else, they're there making deals and shaking hands and setting themselves to make up billions of dollars in good deals. And Trump stands to profit from that as well. So there's the return trip hangover of, oh, that was nice, that was great, man, we set ourselves up to make a lot of money. But you still got to come home and deal with the domestic issues, and you got to come home and deal with that big bulging ulcer in the Gulf, which is now turned into Operation Sledgehammer. So I think he's going to have some hard things to address, but have no doubt that the tycoons and oligarchs he took with him are making deals with Chinese companies, with other Chinese trade and investors. Of course they are. Those are that's why they went. So when you look at all of that, it's quite interesting. I've never seen a president that travels to a state visit and brings the whole band.
Yeah, he doesn't, unless they're the ones who are driving policy and decision making, for sure.
Great point.
Yeah. And this is been my always problem, because I know that in the US, everyone's like, we're a capitalist society, but in reality, it's not. In US, the corporations run the government. In China, the government runs the corporations, but it's basically That's the only difference between them. But in reality, there is no such thing as capitalism or socialism. He basically looks out for those in power and makes sure he enriches himself and them.
It's becoming a classic oligarchy. And we'll see. I'm anticipating this evening at 10 p.m. our time, or at least 10 p.m. on the East Coast, is when Xi Jinping will have a formal ceremony and welcoming. They have their little arrivals, they have their pomp and circumstance, they have their formal lunches and dinners, and then but tonight at 10 p.m. our time, which is 10 a.m. Beijing time, they'll be having the formal receiving ceremony. I anticipate that Trump and Xi Jinping may have spoke already, so we might see a wild zinger or two come out from Trump on what they may have talked about. Might hear something. We don't know, but I'll be watching.
We'll see. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Agalair, always appreciate you coming on. Always appreciate your time and your knowledge. I know, Pete, you are fighting a very important race in North Carolina where you're trying to usurp the AIPAC-backed candidate. Where can people find you? I know you have a brilliant website called, is it Anthony for Congress or is it Aguilar for Congress?
www.aguilar for U.S. Congress. And yeah, we've got a battle fighting the incumbent. The incumbent is raking in millions from AIPAC and AIPAC affiliated PACs and sub-PACs. And that's the reality of the game. But I remain steadfast and confident that it can be beat. And we will, if we get people to show up and vote. And we get people to show up and vote based on the candidate, not the party, and we can make change. Money can't buy everything. It can buy a lot, but it can't buy everything.
And it can never buy your soul. And that's the main thing. You're fighting for the soul of America. So thank you so much for taking your time out. Appreciate you as always, and we're definitely going to get you back on again. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Appreciate it. That was Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Agalair. Make sure you're following him. Go to his website. See if you can support him in any way. If you can get someone like him into Congress, what a golden situation it will be. What's your thoughts on what he said in terms of the escalation? Give me your thoughts in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribe. Put your notifications on. Okay, we're going to be going to the Twitter space now. So we're going to be going to the other channel. But on this channel, guys, make sure you've got your... Because a lot of people come in a bit late. Maybe they haven't got their notifications on. And I want as much support as possible. We need to really grow this channel. It is a bit exhausting. And sometimes you feel is it worth it or not? So go to the YouTube. Put your notifications on. Be ready. Tomorrow we're going to have another great interviews at 3 p.m. Eastern again. 3 p.m. Eastern again. So make sure you're ready. Make sure you've got your notifications on. Make sure you subscribe. We're going to be going back to the other channel. We're going to be going back to the other channel, so let me just quickly have that ready for you so you're ready for when we move across, which is going to be now. And what great interviews. I liked first time we interviewed what's his name again? First time we interviewed his name slipped my mind, but anyways, the first time we interviewed Lieutenant Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. I think it was a great interview. Enjoyed it a lot. I liked it a lot. Yeah, it was an awesome interview. So that was golden. Let me just quickly set this up. So has that crashed? I've got my okay, I think that is the job, but let's see. Okay, so we're live on the other channel now, so that is golden. And if you're on the other channel already, let me know if it's working. I'm about to end this. Everyone come across there. And guys, you know what, the interviews I do put them out as single episodes as well, so do try and watch those. Help boost them and put your comments on them as well, because we want to boost the channel. The more people who move to this channel and are aware of it, we were brilliant, because the lineups we get is brilliant. Just the views on it, especially on YouTube, aren't really up there. But if you look at the people we interview, they're high caliber people. Okay, is this working? Let me know if you're on the YouTube. Okay, and I'm about to end this one, so come across there, guys. Much love.